Good morning. Happy Monday, guys. I'm so sorry I'm late, but I just wanted to make sure that we had some peace and quiet while we read through the Dr. Jeffrey Macdonald case. Let me see who's in the chat. It's been a crazy morning, guys. My little cat, Zoe, is sick, so I have been worried to death about her. Good morning, Donald. Let me unpin this message here. So Donald says that his mom actually went to school with Jeffrey Macdonald's wife, Colette Macdonald. It's very interesting. Oh gosh, I would love to speak to your mom. Let's see. Hey, Broken Justice. How are you doing this morning? Clancy, Stephanie. Good morning, beautiful. It's a crying shame. Good morning. I feel like I've not seen you in a while. It's a crying shame. Stephanie, so sorry about your kitty. You know what? Thank you, Stephanie. That's that little feral kitten that I tamed and brought in the house. That cat was never sick until it got around Cleo, my other little kitten. If y'all remember, I had to take her to the vet and get her some antibiotics. If y'all remember, I kept telling y'all Zoe's one little eye kept blinking. At first, I thought, oh, she's got a respiratory infection. Then I thought, no, it's a nervous tick. Well, evidently, she is sick. Clancy says, hey, Stephanie, I didn't know you liked CC. Of course she does, Clancy, because I love her to death. I've always been a Stephanie Brown fan because she's just so sensible. She's got common sense, and she's a good lady. You know. She's a good person. I like her and Amanda a lot. Now, sometimes we like different people, but that's all right. Thank you, Donald. Thank you. She'll be okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call down to the vet, and I may tell her, just exaggerate the truth a little bit and tell them, because I can't afford a vet visit right now. We done took Skylar to the vet like about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It was like $135, but I'm going to call down there where Cleo's been there before and see if they'll let me pick up some antibiotics without seeing her. Because it wouldn't hurt her to take a dose, because she will catch this off of Zoe. Respiratory infections in cats is highly contagious, but it will not infect dogs or humans. Anyways, it said, I've been reading up about it. Usually they don't prescribe antibiotics for respiratory infections in cats because it's usually viral. But they did Cleo where she was so sick when I took her in. Maybe she'll heal up on her own. I don't know. She's not that bad right now, but I can tell she's sick. Clancy, I had my pumpkin spice coffee like the basic bitch that she is, Stephanie. And I'm in this morning. Good stuff. Oh, I want Burke's Outlet has some pumpkin spice syrup stuff you put in coffee. I'm going to go get that. I've been saying it for a while, but I'm going to go get it. And then I'm going to go to Ollie's because they sell the Starbucks pumpkin spice coffee all year round. Really cheap in there. That's what I'm going to do. Yeah, she is a kitten. She's 4 months old. Both of them are. Zoe may be a little bit older than Cleo. I don't know. I'm thinking they're from the same litter, though, actually. Because there was a little gray cat over there. Okay, so we're going to talk about Jeff. Let me cut my notifications off before we get started here. Because that is so annoying. Let me just see what this was. Hold on. Let me reply to my kiddo here. Hold on. Lord have mercy. He kills me with these questions during the day. It's supposed to be at school, kid. Put your phone up. Did I ask me if he can ride home with somebody? I let him ride home with his little friend. Let me see. Let me find the pictures. Now, I'm going to warn y'all, we are going to look at crime scene photos this morning, too. After we read through this case. I have to read through something, guys, because I just can't do everything from memory. Yeah, no. I just get all mixed up and stuff. Let me take some of these tabs down and get those photos. Okay, let me get all these crime scene photos for a second. Oh my gosh, they're horrific, guys. Okay. Hold on. I remember watching this movie years ago. I believe I watched it on Lifetime. Fatal Vision. Let me find a good picture of him. He still claims to this day that he did not kill his family. Let me just screen share picture. We found a starving cat last night. Wouldn't come close, but we feed it, poor thing. It will eventually. It will. It's hard to tame grown feral cats, but it'll eventually, it might not let you touch it, but it'll come close to you. You never know. You may be able to tame it, though. Okay, so there is Colette, Kimberly, and Kristen. Now, Kimberly is the older child, the 5-year-old, and Kristen was 2 years old when they were murdered, February 17th, 1970. Okay, let me get my stuff here, guys. I'm so unorganized. So, did y'all have a good weekend? And do any of y'all know about this case? Now, I know Donald does because his mom went to school with Colette. Okay. Jeffrey Macdonald. I mean, he wasn't a bad-looking guy back in the day. Look at his picture over here. I can't see the chat, guys. Okay. Jeffrey Robert Macdonald, born October 12th, 1943, is an American former medical doctor and United States Army captain, Green Beret, who was convicted in August of 1979 of murdering his pregnant wife and 2 daughters in February 1970 while serving as an Army Special Forces physician. Now, around Fort Bragg, during this time, drugs was really, really bad because you had all these soldiers coming back from Vietnam, and most of them, well, a lot of them, were addicted to heroin. And Jeffrey Macdonald, he wasn't well liked by the soldiers that would come to him wanting methadone. He would not prescribe it. He would just, tell them, tough it out. So, okay. Macdonald has always proclaimed his innocence of the murders, which he claimed were committed by 4 intruders, 3 male, 1 female, 2 white men, and 1 black man, who had entered the unlocked rear door of his apartment at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and attacked him, his wife, his children, with instruments such as knives, clubs, and ice picks. Prosecutors and appellate courts have pointed to strong physical evidence attesting to his guilt. He is currently incarcerated at the Federal Correctional Institution in Cumberland, Maryland. The Macdonald murder case remains one of the most litigated murder cases in American criminal history. Now, let's read through some of his early life so we can get a good picture, of how they met and everything. Jeffrey Macdonald was born in Jamaica, Queens, New York, the second of 3 children born to Robert and Dorothy Macdonald. He was raised in a poor household on Long Island with a disciplinarian father who, although non-violent towards his wife and children, demanded obedience and achievement from his family. Macdonald attended, let me see if I can say this, Patchogue, something, Medford High School, where he became president of the student council. He was voted the most popular and most likely to succeed by his fellow students, and he was king of the senior prom. Towards the end of his 8th grade year, Jeffrey Macdonald became acquainted with Colette Catherine Stevenson. She was born in 1944. He would later recollect he had first observed Colette walking down the highway of the high school with her best friend, and that although he was attracted to both girls, he found Colette more attractive. She was a beautiful woman. Approximately 2 weeks later, they began talking and formed a friendship, with Macdonald soon asking her out to the movies. The two formed a brief romantic relationship in the 9th grade, with Jeffrey later recollecting they fell in love while holding hands on a balcony while watching the movie A Summer Place. He would later reminisce that whenever he or Colette heard the song theme from A Summer Place across the airwaves, either of us would turn up the radio, he stated. I've never watched that movie. I have no idea what it's about. I'm assuming it's romantic. The following summer, while visiting a friend on Fire Island, Colette announced to Jeffrey that she was dumping him. Jeffrey later formed a relationship with a girl named Penny Wells. Scholarship and marriage. So Jeffrey, he was very smart, and he always set his goals high, which his father didn't believe in failing. He believed in excelling at everything. Jeffrey's high school grades were sufficient for him to earn a 3-year scholarship at Princeton University. Wow, that's prestigious. Where he enrolled as a pre-medical student in 1962. By the second year of his studies, Jeffrey and Wells had separated. Him and Penny broke up. He soon resumed his romantic relationship with Colette, then a freshman at Skidmore College in Saratoga Springs. He would later recollect Colette had grown into a shy young woman with a slight fear of the world in general, who would rely on his own self-confidence. Jeffrey found her timid and gradually viewed himself as her protector in addition to her boyfriend. Oh, so he basically said she's weak. The two regularly exchanged letters, and he would frequently hitchhike to Skidmore College to be in her company at weekends. Although Jeffrey was dating other women at the time, he resolved to marry Colette upon learning she was pregnant. That was like in their sophomore year. Pregnant with his child in August 1963. She in turn left college to raise her child. And their first child was Kimberly, April 18, 1964. With the consent of Colette's family, the two married on September 14th in New York City. 100 people attended the service, with the reception held at the Fifth Avenue Hotel. Wow, swanky. The couple then honeymooned at Cape Cod. Their first daughter, Kimberly Catherine, was born April 1864. Upon completion of his undergraduate degree at Princeton, Jeffrey briefly worked as a construction supervisor before he moved with his wife and child to Chicago in the summer of 1965, where he had been accepted at Northwestern University Medical School. The couple moved into a small one-bedroom apartment, with Colette committed to maintaining the household and raising their daughter as Jeffrey focused on his studies, while also working a series of part-time jobs to assist with family finances. The following year, the family relocated to a middle-class neighborhood. Their second child, Kristen Jean, was born on May 8, 1967. Shortly after Jeffrey graduated from medical school in 1968, he and his family relocated to Bergenfield, New Jersey, as he completed a 1-year internship at the Columbian Presbyterian Medical Center in New York, specializing in thoracic surgery. Jeffrey later described his internship year as a horrendous year for both himself and Colette, It's probably the year he cheated on her because he's admitted to that. Adding he frequently worked 36 hours with only 12 hours at home. What does it say? Coincidentally, when at home, he was frequently exhausted and had limited interaction with his wife and daughters. At the completion of his internship, Jeffrey and Colette vacationed in Aruba before Jeffrey joined the Army. And Colette was very, very supportive of everything that Jeffrey done, especially joining the Army. She was standing right behind him. Hold on, guys. I got a cough. It's killing me. Excuse me. Let me take a drink. Okay. Let's read about his time in the Army. So, Jeffrey enlisted in the United States Army June 28, 1969, and he was sent to Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, to undergo a 6 weeks physician's basic training course. While at Fort Sam, Houston, he volunteered to be assigned to the Army Special Forces, the Green Berets, to become a Special Forces physician. He was then assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia, where he completed their paratrooper training course. Although Jeffrey had joined the Army knowing he might be deployed to serve in the Vietnam War, he later learned that as a Green Beret doctor, he was unlikely to serve overseas. Well, that don't make sense. You would think they would want to send doctors with them when they're deployed. In late August, Jeffrey reported to the 3rd Special Forces Group, Airborne, at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, to serve as the group's surgeon. He was joined by his wife and children, and the Macdonald family resided at 544 Castle Drive, in a section of the base reserved for married officers and afforded security by military police. The couple quickly became popular among their neighbors, although Jeffrey and Colette are known to have argued occasionally. Well, I think everybody argues. I think that's normal. I mean, some people might not be a groupie. When you live with somebody, they're going to get on your nerves eventually. By the time the Macdonalds moved into their new apartment at Fort Bragg, Colette had accrued 2 years of studies with aspirations to obtain a bachelor's degree in English literature and teach part-time. Well, he probably didn't like that because he seemed to, just want to be like the protector and the provider and all that. He viewed her as timid and shy, lack of confidence. Okay. Both daughters had developed distinctive personalities, Kimberly being very feminine and intelligent and shy. Kristen was a boisterous tomboy who would run over and crack someone if she observed her older sister being bullied by other children. Isn't that usually how it goes? Like the first child is like real quiet, and like the second one is just like a ball of fire. Okay, on December 10th, the 3rd Special Forces Group was deactivated, and Jeffrey was transferred on base to Headquarters and Headquarters Company 6 Special Forces Group Airborne, 1st Special Forces, to serve as a preventative medical officer. Shortly before Christmas of 1969, with his wife approximately 3 months pregnant with her 3rd child and their first son, Jeffrey bought his daughters a Shetland pony, and those are not cheap. Anticipating the family would soon relocate to a farm in Connecticut. He kept this purchase a secret from his wife and children, and he and his stepfather-in-law drove them to the stable as a surprise on Christmas Day. His daughters chose to name the pony Trooper. The same month, Colette is known to have penned a letter to a college acquaintance in which she described her life as never being so normal or happy, adding she and her husband were content that their baby son was due to be born in July and her family would be complete. By 1970, Macdonald had earned the rank of captain. He was planning to study advanced medical training at Yale University upon completion of his tour of duty as a Green Beret doctor. Now we get to February 16th through the 17th of 1970. And I cannot see the chat. On the afternoon of February 16th, Jeffrey took his daughters to feed and ride the pony he had bought them for Christmas. The trio then returned home at about 5:45 p.m. Jeffrey then showered, changed into an old pair of blue pajamas. After the family ate supper, Colette left the household to attend an evening teaching class at Fort Bragg, North Carolina University Extension. According to Jeffrey, he then played horsey, allowing his daughters to ride upon his back as if he was their Shetland pony for a short while before he put Kristen to bed at approximately 7 p.m. As Kimberly played a game on the coffee table, he then slept for an hour before watching Kimberly's favorite television show, Laugh In. I never heard that show, Laugh In. With her before his older daughter also went to bed. Colette herself returned home at 9:40 p.m. The two had sat on the couch watching TV together before Colette decided to go to bed midway through The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Jeffrey had himself, they shared a drink. I'm not sure what kind of drink, but like back then, pregnant women would have a drink every now and then, I think, like back in the 60s and 70s. Okay, so Jeffrey had himself fallen asleep in the living room in the early hours the following day, which would be the 17th, February 17th. At 3:42 a.m. on February 17, 1970, dispatchers at Fort Bragg received an emergency phone call from Jeffrey, who faintly spoke into the receiver. Help, 44 Castle Drive, stabbing. 44 Castle Drive, stabbing, hurry. The operator then heard the sound of the receiver clatter against a wall or floor. Within 10 minutes, responding military police had arrived at the residence, initially believing they were responding to a domestic disturbance call. They found the front door closed and locked and the house dark inside. When no one answered the door, they circled to the back of the house, where a police sergeant discovered the back screen door closed and unlocked and the back door wide open. Upon entering, the sergeant walked into the master bedroom before running to the front of the house shouting, "Tell them to get Womack ASAP." Colette Macdonald was discovered sprawled on the floor of the master bedroom. She lay on her back with one eye open, one breast exposed. She had been repeatedly clubbed about her body, with both her forearms later found to be broken, probably because she was trying to protect herself. The pathologist would note these wounds had likely been inflicted as Colette had raised her arms to protect her face. In addition, she had been stabbed 21 times in the chest with an ice pick, 16 about the neck and chest with the knife, and her trachea severed in 2 places. A bloodied and torn pajama top was draped upon her chest, and a paring knife lay beside her body. Beside her, Jeffrey Macdonald was found lying face down, alive but wounded, with his head on Colette's chest, one arm around her neck. As military personnel approached, he whispered, "Check my kids. I heard my kids crying." 5-year-old Kimberly was found in her bed, having been repeatedly bludgeoned about the head and body, stabbed in the neck with a knife between 8 and 10 times. Hold on a minute. Oh. She lay on her left side. Her skull had been fractured from at least 2 blows to the right side of her head. One wound to her face caused her cheekbone to protrude through her skin. God love her heart. The wounds to Kimberly's head were so severe in nature to have caused bruising to her brain, coma, and death soon after infliction. Across the hallway, 2-year-old Kristen was found in her own bed, also lying on her left side, with the baby bottle close to her mouth. She had been stabbed 33 times across the chest, neck, hands, and back with a knife, 15 times with an ice pick. 2 knife wounds had penetrated her heart. The ice pick wounds were noted to be shallow. The injuries to her hands were likely defensive wounds. On the headboard of the Macdonald's marital bed, the word pig was written in 8-inch capital letters. The blood used to write this word was later determined to be Colette Macdonald's blood. Having received impromptu resuscitation, Macdonald sat upright, then explained, "Jesus Christ, look at my wife." So the paramedic is giving him CPR, and he raises up and he says, "Jesus Christ, look at my wife. I'm going to kill those GD acid heads." He was immediately taken to nearby Womack Hospital, shouting, "Let me see my kids," as he was carried out of his home on a stretcher. Trying to be dramatic, huh? I mean, just how crazy is it, guys? Like the Manson murders happened like what, a year or so before these murders. And now this Manson like copycat cult allegedly has broken into this man's house and slaughtered his family. All these wounds and stuff, it reminds me of the Darlie Routier case. The kids were butchered, and she didn't have that bad of wounds, just like Jeffrey Macdonald. Okay, let's go on. Okay, so we're going to go over Jeffrey Macdonald's account of what happened. Let me see if I can go to my YouTube real quick. I live so near Fort Bragg. How interesting. I've never heard this case. Oh, really, Stephanie? Yeah, a lot of people's not. This is a very interesting case. Very, very. Hey, Vicky, good morning. Dang, Womack has been around a long time. Yeah, I was telling Mark this morning, I was like, daggone, this murder happened before you was even born. Okay. Oh, gosh, I'm sharing the wrong thing. Crap, I'm sharing the crime. We will look at the crime scene photos if y'all want. So here's the house they lived in. Let's click on that. Right there. So they lived on base. Okay, so let's go over his account. Hold on one second, guys. I gotta mute for 1 sec. If I can. For some reason, this Chromebook is working so much better. Back here in Timothy's room, I'm sitting at his desk. It's working so much better. Okay. There's the house. Taken to Womack Army Medical Center, medical staff discovered the wounds Jeffrey had suffered were much less numerous and severe than those inflicted upon his wife and children. Sounds like Darlie Routier, huh? He had suffered cuts, bruises, fingernail scratches to his face and chest, although none of these wounds were life-threatening or required stitches. Well, he did have a punctured lung. Jeffrey was also found to have a mild concussion. He also received a single staple wound between 2 ribs of his right torso. This wound was described by a staff surgeon as a clean, small, sharp incision measuring 5/8 of an inch in depth and had caused his lung to partially collapse. Jeffrey was released from the hospital after 9 days. Questioned by the Criminal Investigation Division, CID, Jeffrey claimed that about 2 a.m. on February 17th, he had washed the washed the evening's dinner dishes before deciding to go to bed. Although, because his younger daughter, Kristen, had wet his side of the bed, he had taken her to her own bed. So he went in there to go to bed with Colette, and Kristen's in the bed with her and discovers that she's wet the bed. So he takes Kristen to her room, gets her cleaned up, puts her in bed, and he didn't want to wake Colette up changing the sheets, so he went and got on the couch. Okay, put her in her own bed. Not wishing to wake his wife to change the sheets, he had taken a blanket from Kristen's room and fallen asleep on the living room couch. According to Jeffrey, he was later awakened by Colette and Kimberly's screams, and Colette shouting, "Jeff, Jeff, help. Why are they doing this to me?" That right there sounds a little strange to me. You're being attacked. I mean, maybe people would say that. Why are you doing this to me? Why didn't they attack the male first? I don't know. Let me finish reading here. Why are they doing this to me? As he rose from the couch to go to their aid, he was attacked by 3 male intruders, 1 black, 2 white. The shorter of the 2 white men had worn lightweight, possibly surgical gloves. A 4th intruder he described as a white female with a long blonde hair, possibly a wig, and wearing high-heeled, knee-high boots and a white floppy hat, partially covering her face. This individual stood nearby, holding a lighted candle, chanting, "Acid is groovy, kill the pigs." Jeffrey claimed the 3 males then attacked him with a club and an ice pick, with the female intruder shouting, "Hit him again." During the struggle, his pajama top was pulled over his head to his wrist, and he had used his bound garment to ward off thrusts from the ice pick, although eventually he was overcome by his assailants and knocked unconscious in the living room end of the hallway leading to the bedrooms. When he had regained consciousness, the intruders had left the house. He had then stumbled from room to room, attempting mouth-to-mouth resuscitation upon each of his daughters, to no avail, before discovering his wife. He had pulled a small paring knife from Colette's chest. He then tossed it onto the floor, attempted in vain to find her pulse, then draped his pajama jacket over her body. Then he had phoned for help. Well, I heard him in an interview say that he tried to give Colette mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and every time he would blow into her, blood would bubble up out of her chest. Okay, so that's his account. Oh, crap, I clicked out of it. Hold on. I gotta go back down, guys. Okay. Macdonald's account. Okay, so the initial investigation. Within minutes of the discovery at Castle Drive, military police were instructed to check the occupants of all vehicles in and around Fort Bragg, seeking 2 white men, 1 black man, and a white woman with blonde hair and a floppy hat in an effort to apprehend the 4 intruders Jeffrey alleged had attacked him and his family. Despite these efforts, military police failed to locate the 4 intruders, and the tentative something other was abandoned by 6:00 a.m. Well, actually, according to one of the officer that first responded to the disturbance call at the Macdonald home, said that he did see a woman walking on the sidewalk with blonde hair and a floppy hat and knee-high boots on. He later did say that. Okay. Within minutes of the discoveries that... Okay, I didn't read that. Shortly after daylight on February 17th, investigators recovered the murder weapons just out the back door. It's just like they went out the back door and just threw them. These instruments were an old hickory kitchen knife, an ice pick, and a 31-inch long piece of lumber with 2 blue threads attached with blood. All 3 were quickly determined to have come from the Macdonald house, and all had been wiped clean of fingerprints. Jeffrey later claimed to have never seen these items before. As Army investigators studied the physical evidence, the Army CID quickly came to disbelieve Jeffrey's account, as they found very little evidence to support his version of events. Although Jeffrey was trained in unarmed combat, the living room where he had supposedly fought for his life against 3 armed assailants showed few signs of a struggle apart from the coffee table that had been knocked onto its side with a pile of magazines beneath the edge and a flower plant that had fallen to the floor. Y'all, it was so weird. Like, the plant was laying on the floor with the dirt, but the flower pot was sitting upright. Okay, question of the Macdonald's neighbors revealed that they heard no sounds of a struggle or disturbance within the household in the early hours, but had heard Colette shouting in a loud, angry voice. The 16-year-old daughter of these neighbors, who occasionally babysat for the family, informed investigators the two seemed taciturn and indifferent to each other in the month prior to the murders. By February 23rd, Colonel Robert something other at Fort Bragg, the provost marshal, had advised the FBI to discontinue their search for intruders. They never bought his story. The officers that first responded, they automatically thought that it was Macdonald. In addition to the lack of damage to the inside of the house, no fibers from the Macdonald's torn pajama top were found in the living room, where he claimed the garment had been when torn in his struggle with the intruders. However, fibers from the pajama top were found beneath Colette's body and in the bedrooms of both of his daughters, and one fiber from his garment was also found under Kristen's fingernail. Well, according to the documentary I just watched by People magazine, there was a long blonde hair underneath Colette Macdonald's body, and the hair was from a wig. That hair mysteriously disappeared. Okay, so he had fiber underneath Colette's fingernails from his pajama top. Although this evidence was later lost. Yeah, most time when there is like, when they respond to like a murder scene, they bag the people's hands and stuff before they bag them up and take them out to the coroner's office. They bag their hands so that they won't lose evidence. But they didn't do this to Colette and the girls. Okay. Blood-stained splinters, likely sourcing from the section of lumber recovered close to the back door of the apartment, were recovered from all 3 bedrooms of the apartment, but not the room where Jeffrey claimed to have been attacked. Wow. So, there's evidence everywhere else except for the room that Jeffrey was attacked in. Go figure. Okay. No blood or fingerprints were found on either telephone Jeffrey claimed he had used to call for help after checking each member of his family and attempting to resuscitate them. Furthermore, the blood-stained tip of a surgical glove was also found beneath the headboard where the blood inscription was written, where the word pig was written. This glove was identical in composition to a medical supply Jeffrey invariably kept in the family kitchen. Although it had rained on the night of February 16th through 17th, Jeffrey also specifically claimed the female intruder's boots were all wet with rainwater, just dripping off of them. The sole footprint observed at the scene was a bloody, bare footprint located in Kristen's bedroom, leading from the child's bed in the direction of the doorway. And that was Jeffrey's foot. So let's read over the forensic analysis. Then we'll look at some crime scene photos. So here's one. This is what the living room looked like. Let's see if we click on this picture, if it'll go bigger. I was going to an article. Oh, there's his new wife, guys. That woman right there. It's his new wife. Let's see if we can find. There's like one of the kids' bedroom. So, let me go back. Oh, there's the house. There's the apartment complex. Look how close those apartments are. Isn't that funny? You got 4 people breaking into the house, attacking a pregnant woman and 2 kids and the husband, and nobody hears a damn thing. I mean, that was violent murders. There had to have been a lot of noise made. I'm gonna get back and to my stuff. Okay. By mid-March, the CID had obtained the results of the forensic testings of the blood, hair, and fiber samples within 544 Castle Drive that contradicted Jeffrey's account of his movements and further convinced investigators of his guilt. Well, see, everybody in the family, Colette, Jeffrey, Kristen, Kimberly, they all had different blood types. So, they put it together, who was where and all this. Okay. It contradicted Jeffrey's accounts of his movements and further convinced investigators of his guilt. For example, Kimberly's blood was also found on his pajama top, even though Jeffrey had claimed he was not wearing this garment while in the room attempting resuscitation. Jeffrey's own blood was located in significant quantities in only 2 locations: in front of the kitchen cabinet containing the rubber gloves where the kit was, his medical kit, and upon the right side of a hallway bathroom sink, probably because he was standing in front of the sink when he was injuring himself. He is a surgeon. Very, very intelligent one. He knew how to wound himself and make it look bad without doing too much damage. But it still looked bad on him. Here his family is butchered with ice picks, clubs, pair of knives. And he just got a collapsed lung. That's it. I mean, wait till you see the wound on one of the little girl's heads. I mean, it is freaking huge. Huge. You can see down inside of her head. Okay, let's see. Investigators also questioned why Colette's blood was found in Kristen's room, although all 3 victims were found in separate rooms, suggesting they had been attacked separately. Moreover, although blood evidence indicated Kimberly had been attacked as she entered the master bedroom, investigators questioned why home intruders would bother to carry her back to her bedroom to continue their attack. Exactly. Why would intruders carry the child back to her bedroom to finish killing her? 4 members of the Macdonald family, all 4 members of the Macdonald family had different blood types. A statistical anomaly or something other that assisted investigators in determining the movements of each member of the household and their subsequent theory as to a likely scenario of the unfolding events. Upon the assumption, the 4 individuals discovered by responding military police were the only 4 people in the house in the early hours of February 17th, 1970. Investigators were able to reconstruct a likely scenario of the chain of events that had unfolded through blood typing and the nature of the wounds discovered upon each individual. So now we're going to read about the forensic reconstruction. An argument or fight between Jeffrey and Colette began in the master bedroom, possibly over the issue of Kristen repeatedly wetting his side of the bed while sleeping there, or his adultery. Investigators speculated that the argument turned physical, and she had probably hit him on the forehead with a hairbrush, which resulted in a mark on his forehead, which failed to break the skin, as he retaliated by hitting her first with his fist, then beating her with a piece of lumber. Kimberly, whose blood and brain serum were found in the doorway, may have walked in after hearing the commotion and was struck at least once on the head, possibly by accident. Believing Colette dead, Jeffrey carried the mortally wounded Kimberly back to her bedroom. After stabbing her, Jeffrey then proceeded to Kristen's room, carrying the club he had used to bludgeon Kimberly, intent on disposing of the last remaining potential witness. Before he could do so, Colette, whose blood was found on Kristen's bed covers and on the wall of her room, apparently regained consciousness, stumbled into her younger daughter's bedroom, threw her own body over Kristen in a desperate effort to protect her. Now, this is what the investigators' theory was. After killing both, Jeffrey then wrapped Colette's body in a sheet, carried her body to the master bedroom, leaving a smudged footprint matching her blood type as he exited Kristen's bedroom. CID investigators then theorized that Jeffrey attempted to cover up the murders, using articles on the Manson family murders that he had recently read in the March 1970 issue of Esquire, and it was found right underneath that turned over table in the living room. Investigators have found in the living room, putting on surgical gloves from a medical supply in the kitchen closet. He went to the master bedroom where he used Colette's blood to write the word pig on the headboard. Jeffrey then laid his torn pajama top over her dead body, repeatedly stabbed her in the chest with an ice pick, then discarded the weapons close to the back door of the property after wiping them clean of fingerprints. He had to have done this. If some hippies broke in, they're all tripped out on drugs, they're not going to, they're going to leave their fingerprints behind and everything. They're not going to be able to think I need to wipe my fingerprints off if they're out of it on drugs. Okay, next to the back door of the property after wiping them clean of fingerprints. Finally, Jeffrey took a scalpel blade from the supply closet, entered the adjacent bathroom, and stabbed himself once in the chest while standing beside the sink before disposing of the surgical gloves. I wonder if Darlie Routier got her idea to murder the kids from this case. Because she stood in front of the sink too, kitchen sink. Cut herself. Okay, so let me see. He had then used the family telephone to summon an ambulance before lying down beside Colette's body as he waited for the military police to arrive. And I just want to say, like, his pajama top, like the holes in it, when you laid it on Colette's body, the holes matched up with her stab wounds. What was his purpose? Now, he tried to say the holes in the pajama top is from when he was attacked, right? He shouldn't even probably had no holes in his pajama top from when he was attacked, if you think about it, because he said that they pulled it over his head. Which I did read that he used that pajama top to try to, like, ward off the attack. But you think a combat-trained Green Beret would have been able to have got the best of those guys, which it would have been 4 against 1. Still, okay. Let's go on. This is a long case, guys. Okay, so let's go to the interrogation. On April 6, 1970, Army investigators formally cautioned, then interrogated Jeffrey. He was first offered the chance to recount his version of events and recounted his claims of being attacked by 4 intruders, with whom he grappled before falling to the ground, observing the top of some boots and being rendered unconscious before regaining consciousness, experiencing symptoms of pneumothorax in the hallway after the intruders had left. I don't know what that is. Pneumothorax? Investigators were unconvinced of Jeffrey's account. Midway through questioning, Jeffrey was asked about his stab wounds by investigator William Ivory. "You didn't do it yourself, did you?" he asked. This question prompted Jeffrey to deny the accusation before referencing his puncture wound and having to persuade hospital doctors to insert a chest tube into his body as he was sure his lung was punctured. Oh, he knew his lung was punctured. He did it himself. Questioning then focused upon the crime scene and results of the forensic testing. Jeffrey denied any of the murder weapons had originated from his household, despite the fact the section of lumber matched wood from Kimberly's closet. He also claimed to be unaware of how the fiber and blood evidence contradicted his accounts of his movements and actions. Let me see. This weapon was used on Colette and Kim. It's a brutal weapon. We had 3 people that were overkilled almost, and yet they leave you alive. This is what investigators are saying to him. While you were laying there in the hallway, why don't give you a good blow or 2 from behind the head with that club and finish you off? So they're asking him, why didn't they hit you in the head and stuff? You saw them eye to eye. They don't know that you wouldn't be able to identify them at a later date. Why leave you there alive? Investigator Franz Grebner said. He was questioning Jeffrey as to the minor nature of the wounds inflicted to himself by comparison to his wife and daughter's wounds. And this took place on April 6, 1970. Investigator Rob Shaw then questioned Jeffrey as to the lack of disorder and damage within the household and the lack of any motive, stating that in the investigator's experience, had 4 intruders embarked on a murderous frenzy within a small household, they would expect to encounter evidence such as busted furniture, broken mirrors, bashed in walls, but the only signs of the struggle were the top-heavy living room table, which had flipped over all the way in the midst of a struggle, and a flower pot beside the table with a plant upon the carpet, and the pot standing upright. Jeffrey was unable to offer a plausible explanation for this observation, and also claimed to be unaware how Kimberly's blood and brain serum were recovered from the master bedroom. Well, I would say because she was hit in the master bedroom. That's what I think. Okay, so there is that table that they're talking about. I hope y'all can see that. Okay. Let me see. Following a short break, questioning resumed the same afternoon. Investigator Franz Grebner listed further physical discrepancies between Jeffrey's account and the forensic evidence. Hey, you can't deny forensic evidence. You just can't. Repeatedly stating all the facts pointing to his having staged the crime scene, Jeffrey was unable to offer a plausible explanation to this questioning before abruptly accusing Grebner of having run out of ideas and attempting to frame him to maintain a 100% solved homicide rate. In response, Franz stated, "We have all the business here that would tend to indicate that you were involved in this rather than people who came in from the outside and picked 544 Castle Drive and went up there and were lucky enough to find your open door." Yeah, why was the back door open? When investigators asked Jeffrey to submit to a polygraph test to verify his accounts, He readily agreed. Although within 10 minutes of the conclusion of the interview, he called investigators to state he had changed his mind and would not submit to any polygraph testing. He wouldn't take the truth serum or anything. However, he did take a polygraph test. I can't remember what year it was, like 84 or something. And the guy that gave him the test said that he passed, but he wouldn't do the truth serum. See, you can't lie if you take that truth serum. It will not let you. The truth will just roll on out. Okay, so let's look at the formal charges. Hold on one sec, guys. Hey, knitting artisan, you're late to the. Hey, Mike, I'm just reading through everything that happened. Donald, I wonder why the older daughter had a problem wetting the bed. I mean, I'm on the wrong thing. There's a lot of kids that wet the bed, but a lot of times kids that wet the bed are being abused. Not all the time, but a lot of times. Okay, formal charges. On the evening of April 6th, Jeffrey was relieved of his duty, placed under restriction pending further inquiries. The following day, he was assigned an Army lawyer. At the recommendation of his mother on April 10th, he instead hired a flamboyant civilian defense attorney, Bernard Siegel, to defend him. Less than a month later, on May 1st, the Army formally charged Jeffrey with 3 counts of murder. The same day, Jeffrey penned a letter to Colette's mother and stepfather, Freddie Kassab, professing his innocence. And they were on his side. Colette's mom and stepdad were on his side. They had known him since he'd been 14, 15 years old. And they just, he had everybody fooled. They didn't think he would ever harm Colette and the girls and the unborn baby. Okay, so he penned a letter to Colette's mother and stepfather professing his innocence, emphasizing the Army would never admit their error, and speculating his wife's soul may hold in infinitive patience and understanding of his current legal predicament. What? His wife, he told Colette's mom, wrote it down. Speculating his wife's soul may hold infinitive or something, patience and understanding of his current legal predicament. What a nut. An initial Army Article 32 hearing. And I'm going to tell y'all what an Article 32 hearing is. I didn't know what it was until this case. So an Article 32 hearing is basically the same thing as a civilian grand jury hearing. But in Article 32 hearing, you have that hearing and they decide whether to go forward with the court-martial or not. Okay, so initial Army Article 32 hearing into Jeffrey's possible guilt, overseen by Colonel Warren Rock. And I just want to say that he thought Jeffrey Macdonald was innocent. Warren Rock did, Colonel. Okay, the hearing lasted until September. It started July 6, 1970 and lasted till September 1970. Jeffrey's lawyer, Bernard Siegel, adopted an offensive strategy on behalf of his client at this hearing, citing numerous examples of incompetence on behalf of the Army CID, who he had stated had clumsily and unprofessionally trampled all over the crime scene during their examination of the house. Hell, they let the neighbors and everything walk through that crime scene, guys, the night it happened. Everybody was in there. Actually, Jeffrey Macdonald's wallet was stolen by the ambulance driver, one of the ambulance drivers that night. I kid you not. And the flower pot, you can see the flower pot in this picture right here. Where's my mouse at? Right there. I think the ambulance driver actually stood that upright, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, trampled all over the crime scene during the examination of the house, obliterating any traces of evidence the perpetrators might have left losing vital pieces of evidence, including a single thread found beneath Kimberly's nail, Jeffrey's pajama trousers, 4 torn tips of rubber surgical gloves found in the master bedroom, a single layer of skin found beneath one of Colette's fingernails. Siegel listed several examples of incompetence for military police and responding personnel, including testimony revealing that an ambulance driver had stolen Jeffrey's wallet from the living room. And a pathologist testified to have failed to obtain the children's fingerprints for comparison at the crime scene. Yeah, the crime scene was really, they really dropped the ball on it. Actually, I heard on one of the documentary when they used Jeffrey Macdonald's case as an example, in college when taking courses about crime scene stuff, they used him as an example, his case of what not to do at a crime scene. Okay, y'all, let me get my vape here. Colonel Rock also testified that he himself went to the scene of the crime and tipped the coffee table over, with it striking the side of a rocking chair and coming to a rest on its edge. Colonel also noted the fact that if no footprints and mud were found at the crime scene belonging to the alleged intruder, that meant the crime scene investigators had also failed to find any evidence of a large numbers of military police and civilians who had also walked around the house. Okay, so now we're going to get to the suspects. In August, Siegel was approached by a delivery man named William Posey, who claimed the blonde woman Jeffrey stated had attacked his family might be a local 17-year-old drug addict and police informant named Helena Stokely. I heard someone call her Stockley, but I think it's Stokely. According to Posey, Stokely had been in the company of 2 or 3 young males in a car parked outside her apartment at approximately 4 a.m. on the morning of the murders. Posey also claimed Helena had ceased wearing her boots and her floppy hat subsequent to February 17th and had dressed in black on the date of the funerals, also stating to him she did not remember what she did on the date of the murders. Posey later relayed this information at the hearing, adding that Helena Stokely had informed him months later that she and her boyfriend, what is his name? Oh my gosh, it's William, I think it's William Smith. I can't remember. Her boyfriend could not marry until we go out and kill some more people. That's what she told Posey. She was a real piece of work. Helena was located and questioned regarding her whereabouts on February 17th. We need a picture of her. Hold on. And I found that interview she did with 60 Minutes on YouTube. It's like 30-some minutes long. Let me get Helena's picture up here. Okay, now I'll screen share it. Get a visual of her while I'm reading this. She was paid to say that. You know what I was thinking, Donald? Maybe he paid Helena and her boyfriend to come and do the murders. Now, allegedly, we'll read all this, but Helena said her boyfriend was mad because Jeffrey wouldn't give him no methadone when he went to see him. Okay, so there's Helena Stokely. She went on to have a child. Actually, the interview she done was 60 Minutes. She was pregnant during that interview. And she said in that interview she was part of a satanic cult. Okay. So Helena was located and questioned regarding her whereabouts on February 17, 1970. Her answers were vague and self-contradictory. She recalled being in the company of her boyfriend, Greg Mitchell. I want to call him William so bad. Greg Mitchell on the night of February 16th and going out for a ride in a car in the early hours of the following day, driving aimlessly, but claimed to have been so far out on mescaline. What's mescaline, guys? I know, but I can't think. That she could not say for sure whether she had been at the house or not. Although witnesses had claimed Helena had admitted her involvement in the murder, with several also remembering her wearing clothing similar to that described by Jeffrey on the date in question. She was not subpoenaed to testify. Procedural irregularities regarding investigative conduct into Helena Stokely were also highlighted by Attorney Siegel at the hearing. Following favorable character testimony from several acquaintances and military psychiatrists, Jeffrey testified for 3 days in mid-August. Sections of his testimony contradicted what he had informed investigators on April 6th, including his claim on this occasion to have actually moved Colette's body, having found her a little bit propped up against a chair before he sort of laid her flat on the floor. He also stated that possibly because of his surgical background, he had sort of rinsed off his hands as he checked his own injuries in the bathroom before calling for help. Well, that don't make no sense, trained doctor or not. Let me wash my hands before I check my wounds. These hippies just give me. Okay, he may have washed his hands in the kitchen sink. Okay, hold on a minute. Rinsed off his hands as he checked his own injuries in the bathroom before calling for help. Referencing the type B blood found in the kitchen. Jeffrey testified that he may have also washed his hands in the kitchen sink for some reason prior to making the phone call to emergency services. Contrary to medical reports and his earlier accounts, he also claimed to have located 2 bumps on the back of his head, 2 or 3 puncture wounds to his upper left chest, other wounds to his right bicep, approximately 10 ice pick wounds to his abdomen on February 17th or 18th, all of which had healed without treatment, none of which had required surgery. So he's got to come up with this story to explain why large amounts of his blood was found, like he was standing in front of the bathroom sink and the kitchen sink. So to explain that away, he's like, oh, well, where I'm trained, I might have washed my hands. Who would think to wash their damn hands when their family's just been brutally attacked and butchered? Surgeon or not, that don't make sense. That was just to explain away why his blood was there, in my opinion. Okay, let's see. Question in regards to his infidelity. Jeffrey admitted he had been unfaithful on 2 occasions, but insisted Colette had not known about either affair. He also claimed their time at Fort Bragg had been the most content of their married life. I did hear him say that in a documentary. Macdonald's testimony was followed by that of a clinical psychologist, who testified as to conclusions of a series of tests he had conducted on Jeffrey. This expert testified that the test revealed an extraordinary absence of anxiety, depression, and anger in Jeffrey with regard to the loss of his family. And this report concluded he was able to muster massive denial or repression to such a degree that the impact of the recent events in his life had been blunted. Furthermore, this extreme psychological response would likely see an individual convey himself as victimized and perhaps somewhat of a what? Marty something. Does that mean martyr? Martyr. What does that mean? Oh, you would think that someone whose family had just been brutally murdered. He would have some damn anger inside him. Mescaline is a hallucinogenic drug. Yeah, I thought it might have been, but I was thinking, might be speed. Lisa Wist says, I agree with the hand washing. Yeah, he had to try to explain away the evidence somehow. Somehow. Oops, oops, oops. Okay, so let's go to the initial dismissal of the charges. This is a long one, guys. Initial dismissal of the charges. To the, it says, to the chagrin of Colonel Kiwanis or something on October 13, 1970. Colonel Rock issued a report recommending the charges be dismissed against Jeffrey as insufficient evidence existed to prove his guilt, adding his belief no truth existed in the charges and that the nature of the murders led him to believe the perpetrators were either insane or under the influence of drugs. When something bad happened back then, somebody murdered, they must be insane, like somebody crazy like Manson. No, he wanted rid of his damn family so he could go out and live the high life. That's what I think. I think investigators are right. I think the little girl wet the bed and they got in an argument. He hit Colette and accidentally hit Kimberly in the head. But he must have had to went and got the wood from Kimberly's closet, right? That's what it said. Okay. So in December, let's see. Hold on a minute. Okay, insane or under the influence of drugs. Colonel Rock also recommended that civilian authorities further investigate Helena Stokely. Later the same month, all charges were formally dismissed. Although a new CID investigation task with finding the murders was assembled in February 1971, with Jeffrey still considered a suspect. In December, Jeffrey received an honorable discharge from the Army and initially returned to New York City, where he briefly worked as a doctor before relocating to Long Beach, California in July 1971. And I just want to say, Colette's stepdad, Freddie Kassab, was livid about this. Very livid. He relocated to Long Beach, California, okay, in an effort to put the past behind him. Now, his family was just murdered like a year and a half before, but he wanted to move to Long Beach and put the past behind him, even though the murderers hadn't been caught. The alleged murderers hadn't been caught. He wanted to put the past behind him. Now, what the hell he wanted to do was go on out to California so that he could go out and whore hop around. And Freddie Kassab and Mildred wouldn't know anything about it. That's what he wanted to do. Let's see. Yes, blood evidence is always important. Yeah, you can't deny forensic evidence. Okay. In an effort to put the past behind him and to distance himself from the constant reminders of his wife and daughter, he obtained employment as an emergency room physician at St. Mary Medical Center. Frequently working long hours, he also became an instructor at the UCLA Medical School, a medical director at the Long Beach Grand Prix, a lecturer on the subject of the recognition and treatment of child abuse, and a participant in the development of National Cardiopulmonary Resuscitation Training Program. Jeffrey lived in a $350,000 Huntington Beach condominium apartment. You just think about that back then. This is in the damn 70s. Condominium apartment is known to have lived a promiscuous lifestyle prior to forming a long-term relationship with a 22-year-old airline stewardess named Candy Kramer in the late 1970s. You know, Jeffrey Macdonald's like 80 years old. In the years immediately following the dismissal of the murder charges, Jeffrey received an abundance of emotional and public support. He also wrote letters to several magazines and newspapers detailing his willingness to further publicize the background and legalities of his case. Now we're going to read about the further investigation. I would hate to find out this guy was anywhere near my medical care. They said he was an exceptional doctor. He set the bar high, everything he done. But I know what you mean. Oh, crap, I spilled coffee on my notebook here. Okay, within days of the dismissal, Jeffrey began granting press interviews and media appearances, most notably on December 15th, 1970 episode of the Dick Cavett Show, which really pissed Freddie Kassab off. He was freaking mad because Jeffrey Macdonald, I'll finish reading it, but Jeffrey Macdonald gets on there and he don't even mention his wife and kids. He's just talking about what the Army did to him. Pissed off about that, charging him with murder. Okay, the Dick Cavett Show, during which he appeared flippant. What's flippant mean, guys? As he complained about the Army investigation and their focus on him as a suspect. The family is always the first suspects. The people closest to him. Okay. Complained about the Army's investigation and their focus on him as a suspect. On this occasion, he claimed to sustained 23 wounds, some of which he claimed were potentially fatal. He knew where to wound himself to make it look like it was a bad thing without doing too much damage. Okay. Jeffrey's stepfather-in-law, Alfred Kassab, Freddie Kassab, had initially believed in his stepson-in-law's innocence. Both he and Colette's mother, Mildred, had testified in support of Macdonald during the Army's Article 32 hearing, informing the press, "My wife and I feel very strongly about Captain Macdonald's innocence. After all, it was our daughter and 2 grandchildren who were butchered." However, by November 1970, Freddie Kassab had grown suspicious of Jeffrey's repeated reluctance to provide him with a 2,000-page transcript of the Article 32 hearing. He would ask Jeffrey for it, and Jeffrey would just put it off. Dr. Jeffrey Macdonald had a big mouth on TV, yes, this right here is what made him really reopen this case. Him going on the Dick Cavett Show. If y'all have never watched Fatal Vision, look it up here on YouTube. You can probably find it on Tubi or something too. It's a good movie. Okay, 2,000-page transcript of the Article 32 hearing. In an apparent effort to discourage Freddie's effort to obtain a copy of the transcript in his pursuit of the killers, Jeffrey told his stepfather-in-law that he and some Army colleagues had actually tracked down, tortured, and eventually murdered one of the 4 alleged murders. Now, Freddie was very suspicious of Jeffrey Macdonald by this time, and he actually recorded this phone call. Flip it means not being serious or respectful of the situation. Well, he was a smiling and a laughing and everything on that show. I've seen clips of it, Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Okay. Pursuit of the killers. Okay. Oh, no. Macdonald told his stepfather, tracked down and killed the murderers. Kassab's suspicion greatly increased following Jeffrey's casual, dismissive demeanor on the Dick Cavett Show, just days after he had himself hand-delivered 500 copies of an 11-page letter to members of Congress requesting a congressionally mandated reinvestigation of the murders, and he and his wife publicly turned against Jeffrey Macdonald. Yeah, he wrote to Congress and everything. And you got to remember, this happened like in 1970. I don't think he was convicted till 79. We'll read and see. So Freddie successfully obtained a copy of the Article 32 transcript from the Army in February 1971. He repeatedly studied the document, realizing Jeffrey's claims were inconsistent with the physical facts and concluding his account was nothing more than a tissue of lies that repeatedly contradicted the known facts of the case. One example of Jeffrey's assertion that he had sustained life-threatening injuries included 10 ice pick wounds. During the alleged physical assault at the hands of his assailant, Freddie had met Jeffrey in the hospital less than 18 hours after the attack and had observed him sitting up in bed eating a meal with very little bandaging or other medical dressing on his body. An examination of hospital records confirmed Jeffrey had received no such wounds. Kassab also discovered that within weeks of the murders of his family, Jeffrey had begun dating a young woman employed at Fort Bragg. Well, that's something new I've learned. I missed that somewhere, or I didn't remember it. I didn't know within weeks of the murders that he was seeing a woman that he met at Fort Bragg. Okay, he and his wife also discovered that by 1969, he had rekindled his relationship with Penny Wells. And Penny Wells is the girl that Jeffrey dated after Colette dumped him the first time when they was like 14, 15 years old. Okay, with the cooperation of Colonel I can't say his name, and other Army investigators, Freddie Kassab revisited the crime scene. They let him go inside the crime scene, Colette's stepdad, for several hours in order to compare the physical evidence against Jeffrey's testimony in March 1971. This personal assessment ultimately convinced Freddie Kassab of Jeffrey's guilt, and he resolved to devote his life to pursuing all legal avenues to bring Jeffrey Macdonald to justice. As the Army investigation was completed, the only way Freddie could bring Jeffrey to trial was through a citizen's complaint filed through the United States Department of Justice. He filed this complaint in 1972. Although because the murders had occurred while Jeffrey was serving in the Army and he had since been discharged, the citizen's complaint was declared moot. The FBI refused to take on the case. Legal maneuvers. The movie is good on YouTube, but the book is better. Yeah, Donald, I actually looked up the book on Amazon this morning. You can get the hardcover, $10.99. I'm going to get it, and I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to pass it on to somebody else. Okay. Legal maneuvers. Between 1972 and 74, the case remained trapped in limbo in the Department of Justice as legal issues were raised and debated over whether sufficient evidence and probable cause existed for an indictment and prosecution. On April 30th, 1974, the Kassabs, their attorney, Richard Kahn, and CID agent Peter Kearns presented a citizen's complaint against Jeffrey to U.S. Chief District Court Judge Algernon Butler, requesting the convening of a grand jury to indict Jeffrey Macdonald for the murders. The following month, Justice Department Attorney Victor ruled the case was worthy of prosecution. He would have never been prosecuted if it hadn't been for Freddie Kassab. Freddie Kassab was a good man, and he really loved his stepchildren. Actually, I think Freddie has a son, and I saw him on a documentary. Okay, so grand jury. August 12th, 1974. A grand jury convened before the U.S. District Judge Franklin Dupree in Raleigh, North Carolina, to hear the legal proceedings. 75 witnesses were called to testify. Jeffrey was the first individual to testify at this hearing. His testimony lasted 5 days, during which he conceded that although he had publicly resolved to pursue all legal avenues following the 1970 dismissal of the murder charges against him, and to hire investigators, he had failed to do so. Basically, he had done nothing to try to find the murderers of his family. Okay. Nonetheless, he was adamant he had made his own efforts to identify the perpetrators and to locate Helena Stokely. He also claimed the numerous fabrications he had provided to the Kassabs and to sections of the media in the intervening years were to placate his in-laws, and that he had received more stab and puncture wounds to his body than recorded in medical records, which he blamed on malpractice. When asked by Victor, I can't say his name, if he would submit to either a polygraph or sodium amytal or something test to verify his versions of events, Jeffrey read a statement prepared by his attorneys denying the request. Yeah, he wouldn't take that truth serum. That's not his Freddie Kassab's son. Is that his stepson? Thank you, Donald. Donald knows so much about this. Okay, other witnesses to testify included surgeons on duty at Womack Hospital who had examined Jeffrey and who testified that aside from a punctured lung, Jeffrey was not in any great danger medically, and that save for a superficial stab wound to his upper left arm and abdomen, Jeffrey had no other stab wounds to his body. So why would he lie to his in-laws like that and act like he had all these stab wounds? I'll tell you why. Because he knew Freddie Kassab was a smart man. And Freddie Kassab was going to say, why'd you just got like 2 things wrong with you? And my daughter and grandkids are butchered. You know, he knew he would ask questions like that. So that's why he fabricated it. Thank God Freddie Kassab recorded his phone conversations with Jeffrey Macdonald. I've heard that one. Okay. Okay, other witnesses testified, including surgeons on duty at Womack Hospital. Okay, we read that. Macdonald had no other stab wounds to his body. A reporter who covered the Article 32 hearing and who interviewed Jeffrey after the charges were dropped also stated that in his experience, individuals under the influence of LSD seldom become violent, and that they contrast those who consume amphetamines frequently do. Oh, yeah. So what they're saying is those hallucinogenic drugs, people usually don't become violent on them. They kind of lay on back. But amphetamines do the opposite. Speed, like people that's on meth and stuff like that, they go plumb batshit crazy. Okay, on December 12th, a former chief of psychiatry who had also testified at the Article 32 hearing, Bruce Bailey, testified. Bailey stated that when discussing his family and events surrounding their deaths with him, Jeffrey would occasionally become emotional, become tearful, but he recovered quickly. Bailey also testified he felt Jeffrey to be a controlling individual who was extremely dependent on what others thought of him, and that he would often launch into a verbal tirade to allow his deep-seated emotions to become expressed by other means. When questioned as to whether Jeffrey suffered from a mental disorder, Bailey testified he did not, although he could not discount the possibility of him murdering members of his family in a situation of extreme stress. This testimony was followed by a Philadelphia-based psychologist who conceded that had Jeffrey committed such an act of violence, he would successfully, completely block the episode out of his mind. So this is a psychologist saying if he really did this, he has the ability to block that out of his mind like it never happened. The chief of the FBI's crime laboratory chemistry section, Paul Stombaugh, then testified the pajama top placed over Colette's body had been heavily bloodstained before the garment was torn, and that contrary to Jeffrey's claims, a lack of tearing at the edges of these holes proved that all 48 holes within the items of clothing had been inflicted while the garment was stationary rather than in motion. Stoneball also testified all the cuts within all the garments other than the pajama top had been inflicted with the old hickory knife found outside the family home, and not the paring knife he claimed to have removed from Colette's body. The majority of this blood had belonged to Colette, and her blood had transferred onto the garment on at least 4 locations prior to the garment being torn. Furthermore, the club used to bludgeon Colette and Kimberly, which Jeffrey had denied any knowledge of, had also been solved from one of the mattress slates in Kimberly's bedroom, and a single hair found in Colette's right palm had sourced from her own body and not a blonde hair intruder. Further testimony. Macdonald was recalled to testify before the grand jury on January 21st, 75. On this occasion, he was very arrogant, sarcastic when questioned with regards to issues such as infidelity or the prosecution's illustration of forensic contradictions between his versions of events and physical evidence. On one occasion, shouting, "I have no idea. I don't even know what the crap you're trying to feed me," in response to a question as to how his blood and Colette's blood had transferred onto a sheet taken from Kristen's bedroom into the master bedroom. He also refused to discuss the results of a private polygraph test to which he had consented in 1970, the results of which had been given to Bernard Siegel, indicating he would have to speak with his attorney on this matter before consenting to this line of inquiry. Following a brief recess, Jeffrey read a statement prepared by his attorneys denying the prosecution's request to discuss the results of his 1970 polygraph examination, contending Warhide or something had violated attorney-client privilege. He then read his own statement to the jury, claiming 5 long years had passed since the murder of his family, his efforts to start a life afresh, and the questions posed by the prosecution were the ones he had to live with for 5 years. I mean, that just blows my mind. His pregnant wife is butchered. His 5-year-old, his 2-year-old is butchered. But he just wants to move on and put the past behind him and start a new life, y'all. Right there's a dead giveaway. He made no efforts. Like, let's say he's telling the truth. He made no efforts to find these intruders. I mean, the only effort he made was in lying to the Kassabs about his injuries and telling, Freddie Kassab that him and an army buddy had tracked down one of the intruders and tortured and murdered them. I mean, innocent people don't lie like that. But Cece, there's no such thing as truth serum. Can you imagine the things we could find out if there were, as long ago, been proven to be no such thing? That's the name of the truth serum here, but I didn't really, Cheryl. I didn't know that. We'll look it up, Cheryl. We'll look it up here in a minute. You're a mean one. Okay, let's see. Indictment, January 24th, 1975. The grand jury formally indicted Macdonald 3 counts of murder. Within the hour, he was arrested in California. January 31st, he was freed upon a $100,000 bail raised by family and friends and colleagues, pending disposition of the charges, although he was arraigned on May 23rd and pleaded not guilty to the murders on this date. On July 29th, Judge Dupree denied the double jeopardy and speedy trial arguments successfully filed by his attorney and allowed the proposed trial date of August 18, 1975 to stand, although the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled to stay the proceedings on August 15th. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not double jeopardy because, I mean, he was charged with murder when he was in the Army and they had the Article 32 hearing. And the charges was, he wasn't, I guess it's not double jeopardy because he wasn't felt guilty or not guilty. They just dropped the charges. Okay, let me see. Okay, Judge Dupree denied the double jeopardy speedy trial argument successfully filed by his attorneys and allowed the proposed trial date of August 18, 1975 to stand. Although the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled to stay the proceedings on August 15th. The panel of this court ordered the indictment dismissed on the grounds of the defendant's right to a speedy trial on January 23rd, that's my birthday, 1976. Of course, I was born in 80. Jeffrey himself later claimed to sweep tears of relief rather than tears of joy upon hearing this news, and later recollected to return to a big celebration that his ordeal was now over. That's what he thought. It's not over till the fat lady sings, as they say. Okay, let me see what he says. This story, as Jeffrey told it, had to be fabrication. It could have not have happened the way he said it happened. None of his story holds together. I mean, none of what he says he did. He claims to have been attacked in the living room. He claimed to have sustained 10 ice pick wounds. Now those 10 ice pick wounds, nobody has ever seen them. No doctor in a hospital ever saw them. Alfred Kassab commenting on the inconsistencies of Jeffrey's account of his actions and wounds sustained on the night of the murders, as contained in the transcript of the Article 32 hearing in 1976. So what I read was what Freddie Kassab was saying. An appeal on behalf of the government led to a reinstatement of the indictment through an 8-0 margin. I don't know what that is. Within the United States Supreme Court, May 1st, 1978. In response to this decision, Alfred Kassab informed the press he and his wife welcomed the development, stating it has been a tremendous personal pressure to have someone running around that you are convinced killed your daughter and grandchildren. On October 22nd, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals rejected Jeffrey's double jeopardy arguments. The Supreme Court refused to review this decision on March 19, 1979. Jeffrey was brought to trial on July 16, 1979, charged with 3 counts of murder. He was tried in Raleigh, North Carolina before Judge Dupree, pleaded not guilty to the charges. Jeffrey was defended by Bernard Siegel, Wade Smith, James Blackburn, Brian Mortaw or something, and Brian Mortaw prosecuted the case. Initial jury selection began on this date and would continue for 3 days. Although Jeffrey's lawyers had been confident of an acquittal, they were successive rulings against the defense. The first such ruling was Judge Dupree's refusal to admit into evidence a 1979 psychiatric evaluation of Jeffrey, which suggested that an individual of his personality and mindset was highly unlikely to be capable of killing his family. Dupree justified this refusal by stating that as Jeffrey's attorneys had not entered an insanity plea for their client, he did not wish for the trial to be hindered by an opinionated and contradictory psychiatric testimony from prosecutors and defense witnesses. A further defense setback was the judge ruling against a motion to suppress the introduction of Jeffrey's pajama top evidence. Well, I'm pretty sure that, like his pajama bottoms, the hospital threw those away. Yeah, they were lost. On the first day of the trial, Judge Dupree allowed the prosecution to admit into evidence the March 1970 copy of Esquire magazine, which had the Manson article in it, found in the Macdonald house, part of which contained a lengthy article relating to the Manson family murders. However, Dupree also refused the prosecution's request to allow any sections of the early Article 32 transcripts from Macdonald's 1970 Army hearing to be produced as evidence, ruling that as the current trial was a civilian trial and the Article 32 military hearing held several reports from the military investigators which had suggested Jeffrey had murdered his family in a drug-induced rage. This evidence was also opinionated. So, Helena Stokely, I think she testified in front of the judge, guys, but when she got on the stand, the defense thought that she was there smoking gun. I'm not going to read through all the trial, but when she got on the stand, she just said she'd done so many drugs she couldn't remember. Here, I'll read what she says. Hold on, I'm going to take me a puff. Donald says, don't lie about your age. You're 60. Hey, I wish, Donald. I wish. I'll be what, 43? I'm loving this, Cece. Thank you so much for doing all this research for us. Very well done, my friend. Well, I'm reading from something. Thank you, Cheryl. I'm reading from something, but that's the way I have to do these cases, guys. I don't got time to sit down and write out a script, and I can't remember everything. I'm not good at explaining, so it's just better for me to read and, put some input in. Okay. So one of the final defense witnesses, Jeffrey's lawyer, Siegel, subpoenaed to testify, was Helena Stokely, intent on extracting a confession from her, because she had told everybody. She had told police, defense attorneys, her mother, everybody, that her and her boyfriend and some friends committed the murders. Okay, intent on extracting a confession from her, and she had been one of the intruders Jeffrey claimed had entered his house and murdered his family and attacked him. Siegel talked to Stokely in private for over 2 hours, attempting to persuade her to confess to end Jeffrey's years of suffering and unjustly. Also promising her immunity from prosecution due to the expiration of the statute of limitations. Stokely repeatedly informed Siegel she was unable to help him. She also denied ever having seen Jeffrey and refused to testify to acts she was adamant she did not commit. She would not get in court and admit it. I guess she's afraid to go to prison. Forever a song. Hey, honey, welcome. Okay, defendant's testimony. The final witness to testify on behalf of the defense was Jeffrey Macdonald himself, who testified on his own behalf on August 23rd and 24th. Jeffrey was first questioned by Bernard Siegel, who sought to humanize his client in the eyes of the jury. He began his questioning by asking Jeffrey about his family. Jeffrey described each family member, their individual personalities, stating the family shared almost everything. We were all friends. Colette and I shared the children growing up. We shared our life experiences. He also claimed the reason he had never remarried was the fact he was unable to forget his wife and children. Well, he wasn't unable to forget them when he was out with that 22-year-old stewardess. Honey, let's see. Okay. Siegel then asked Jeffrey to recount his family's background, his career at Fort Bragg, his family's general lifestyle in February 1970. He then produced several family photographs and artifacts, asking Jeffrey to describe each item or the circumstances surrounding each photograph, and to identify the individual in each image. Jeffrey then recounted his life in the years since the death of his family, describing his decision to relocate to California as an effort to distance himself from well-wishers, and insisting the reason he worked up to 80 hours a week was it was easier than sitting and thinking about his family. Well, he wasn't sitting and thinking about it when he was out there buying that sports car, dating everybody. They said it was promiscuous. Following day, James Blackburn cross-examined Jeffrey. He outlined every piece of physical and circumstantial evidence recovered at the crime scene, which contradicted Jeffrey's own accounts of the assailants attacking him and murdering his family. Instead, indicated his own guilt. Blackburn typically began each question with a statement to the effect that Dr. Macdonald, should the jury find from the evidence, Macdonald was unable to offer any plausible explanation for these discrepancies. For example, he was unable to explain how the piece of lumber used as a weapon came from a mattress slat on Kimberly's bed, but claimed there may have been some wood in the utility room, later adding his insistence the club which had struck him across the head was sort of smooth and may have been a baseball bat as opposed to a wooden instrument. He also claimed the earlier testimony of Army investigators pertaining to his questioning on April 6, 1970, was unreliable due to poor conduct of the investigators and the fact several weeks had elapsed between the murders and his formal questioning. Why is that? Why did they wait several weeks, according to him, to question him? When questioned Jeffrey with regards to various discrepancies in his accounts of his movements, the injuries he sustained, and the positioning of his pajama top upon the body through the night of the murders with regards to the tearing and fiber evidence sourcing from the garment, Blackburn succeeded in highlighting several discrepancies in Macdonald's account by comparisons to previous interview transcripts in his current claims and the contradictions of his testimony with the forensic evidence. In response, Jeffrey's attorney Siegel repeatedly raised objections to this line of question, claiming that discrepancies were misleading. His objections were frequently overruled. Okay, let's see. Following a brief recess, Blackburn resumed his cross-examination. On this occasion, he illustrated instances of Macdonald adjusting his testimony regarding having moved his wife's body after learning fibers from his pajamas top were found beneath her body. Yeah, he always said he found her laying on the floor like that. He never said a damn thing about her being propped up against the wall and having to lay her body flat. He's just trying to he's just trying to say that. He's trying to adjust his testimony to the evidence. Now, the documentary I watched, they did say a bloody syringe was found, I guess, outside the Macdonald home, I guess where the murder weapons was found. But, he could have got a bloody syringe. He could have went and seen some druggies or something and got that. He could have the murders planned out. I thought about that. But that's what the defense attorneys claimed, that there was a bloody syringe found. They also said that there was black candle wax on the living room carpet, consistent to what Jeffrey Macdonald said about a woman holding a candle, chanting something, acid is groovy, kill the pigs. He could have done that himself. Okay. Following a brief recess, Blackburn resumed his cross-examination. Hold on. He then asked direct questions regarding the location of blood, fiber, other physical evidence within his apartment, which directly contradicted his accounts of his movements and those of members of his family. Blackburn frequently accompanied these questions with the hypothetical suggestion that if the jury should find from the evidence, forensic or circumstantial evidence, which contradicted Jeffrey's testimony, would he have any plausible explanation for these discrepancies? Jeffrey did frequently attempt to rebuff this line of questioning, but was typically unable to offer any explanation for this evidence. It was basically a big, big mistake putting him on the stand because he come off as arrogant, from what I understand. So closing arguments happened on August 28, 1979. Okay, so James Blackburn argued first, outlined the injuries inflicted upon Colette, Kimberly, and Christian, as opposed to Jeffrey. He then outlined the medical testimony, which listed the sole serious injury Jeffrey had suffered as being the pneumothorax, something other wound, his collapsed lung, stating that if the prosecution conceded the wound was potentially life-threatening, the wound was the sole serious injury he sustained, referencing the life and death struggle Jeffrey claimed to have engaged in with the alleged intruders. Yeah, I mean, for what he said happened, he didn't have a lot of injuries, compared to the rest of the family. He just had some little bitty cuts. Is Adam arrested, Lisa? Okay, we'll look at that in a minute. I'm trying to get through this, guys, because I ain't got much more time. Okay, let's see. So they done their closing arguments. Okay, so let's I'm not going to read all that. Conviction and incarceration. Shortly after 4 p.m., August 29, 1979, the jury, having deliberated for 6.5 hours, announced they had reached their verdict. Jeffrey was convicted of one count of first-degree murder in the death of Kristen, 2 counts of second-degree murder in the deaths of Colette and Kimberly. 4 juries wept as they announced their verdicts. Jeffrey's mother rushed out of the courtroom. Jeffrey himself displayed no emotion. Judge Dupree imposed a life sentence for each of the murders, to be served consecutively. Bail was revoked. Jeffrey was temporarily transferred to Butner County Jail prior to his permanent transferal to the Federal Correctional Institution in Terminal Island, California. But he's up north right now. Immediately following the verdict, Alfred Kassab telephoned the family lawyer, Richard Kahn. Kassab thanked the lawyer for his exhaustive efforts over the years, stating, "Hi, Dick. I just got what I wanted. 3 life sentences. Thanks for everything. We couldn't have done it without your help." The Kassabs also informed the press this was something that had to be done. Now we can rest in peace. Jeffrey appealed Dupree's bail revocation ruling, requesting that bail be granted pending the outcome of his appeal. This application was rejected on September 7th. A further appeal to be freed on bail was rejected by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals on November 20th. Now, post-convictions, he's done like a lot of appeals. He filed, what is it? He said they violated his Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial. Let's see. Hold on. Appeals. It looks like they might have let him out. July 29, 1980. A panel at the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals reversed Jeffrey's conviction, ruling through 2-1 margin that the 9-year delay in bringing him to trial violated his Sixth Amendment right to a speedy trial. He was released on August 22nd, having posted a $100,000 bail. Subsequently returned to work as the director of emergency medicine at St. Mary's Medical Center in Long Beach, California. He would later announce his engagement to his fiancée, Randy D. Marquith, in March 1992. 6 months later, December 18th, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals voted 5-5 to hear the appeal. As the majority did not vote to hear this appeal, the application was accordingly denied upon the previous ruling. This decision was appealed, and on May 26, 1981, the U.S. Supreme Court accepted the case for consideration, hearing oral arguments on December 7th. On March 31st, 1982, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 that Jeffrey's rights to a speedy trial had not been violated, stating the time interval between the dismissal of the military charges and the indictment on civilian charges should not be considered in determining whether the delay in bringing Jeffrey to trial violated his right to a speedy trial under the Sixth Amendment. He was rearrested, returned to federal prison, and his original sentence of 3 consecutive life terms was reinstated. The following year, Jeffrey dismissed Siegel as his legal representative. Defense lawyers filed a new motion for Jeffrey to be freed on bail pending appeal, but the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals refused. His remaining points of appeals, including the contention the evidence presented at trial did not justify the findings of his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, were heard on June 9, 1982, although his conviction was anonymously affirmed on August 16th. Shortly thereafter, Jeffrey's license to practice medicine in both North Carolina and California was revoked. He's had all kinds of, he's had all kinds of appeals, and he is still setting his butt in a federal prison. I'll tell you exactly where he's at. He is incarcerated at the Federal Correctional Institution in Cumberland, Maryland. Now, I believe it was last year. Donald can correct me if I'm wrong. He filed, because he was like 78 years old last year. He filed a thing to where he wanted them to release him from prison because he's real sick. I mean, he is real sick, but they wouldn't do it. He wanted a compassionate release granted, but they denied it. He will die in prison. My mother was Colette's mother was with Colette's mother's court. I sent Colette brother pictures of his sister and my mother's teenager sleeping in Colette's bed. Oh my gosh. I'd love to see those. I'd love to see those pictures. I want to show y'all something. I want to show y'all what compared. If y'all see these ones right here. Now, I'm warning y'all. Don't look at the screen if you got a queasy stomach. Now, this is Colette's injuries. I mean, she was savagely beaten on. Is it showing this for y'all? Let me go to my phone. Hold on, let me respond to Timothy. I'm gonna get all over him if you don't put up that skull. Put up that phone at skull. Hold on. Okay, baby. I always tell my son I love him. Every text message. Okay. So there's one of her injuries. You know, if this was a newer case and stuff, I wouldn't share these photos. But since it happened like back in 1970, 10 years before I was even born, I'll share them. Okay, so there was one of her head injuries. I wanted to, let's see this one. Wounds to the head and neck of Colette. Wounds to the chest of Colette. Look at all those wounds. And compared, it's showing her baby. Compared to what he had, I mean, they were butchered. Now, there's some child photos here, guys. Don't look if it's going to bother you, if it's going to trigger you or something, okay? Because this is very graphic. Now, this is the wound to Kimberly's head, guys. Look at that. Look how savagely this family was murdered. Here's Kimberly's neck wounds and stuff. Let me see what else. Let me go. Let me scroll down here so y'all don't see the pictures and just let me check my YouTube chat here because I can't see anything. Anyways, I've got a little video. I've got the Helena Stokely interview with 60 Minutes where she admitted that she murdered the Macdonald family. But that 60 Minutes episode, it never aired, guys. Never aired. Okay. You can't see anything? Okay. Let me re-screen share. Sometimes when you screen share on there, it will only share the tab that you selected it to share. And sometimes, okay, let me see which one it is. This one, okay. Okay, so y'all couldn't see the first time. So these are very, very graphic. Let me go down. We're going to start with Colette. Since I thought I was screen sharing. This is the one to her head and neck. These were pictures taken at the morgue coroner's office. Look at this. Wounds to the chin, neck, and chest of Colette Macdonald. Goodness gracious. These people are freaking butchered. Wounds to the left arm of Colette. Let's not forget both her forearms were broken. I think she was, defending herself from the blows. So these people, like, according to Jeffrey, these what'd they say? 2 white guys, a black guy, and Elena. They go break in this house. Don't take no weapons with them. All the weapons come from the house. But according to Jeffrey, the paring knife and stuff wasn't theirs. But who's to say it wasn't? He could say that. Okay. There's the wounds to her head, neck, and chest. One of her eyes is still open. Bless her heart. I don't want to keep them up on the screen too long, guys. Wounds to the upper body of Colette Macdonald. I mean, I hate looking at these. He really did a number on him. Okay, let's go down to Kimberly. It's autopsy photos, the warning. Okay, this is the first one I want to show. The wound to her skull. I want you to look at this. He beat I mean, he beat her to death. I mean, look at this hole in this child's head. Have you ever seen such a sight? Okay, I'm not going to show the picture of her whole body. Kimberly Macdonald head and neck wounds. I don't think the other. Okay, here's Kristen. Let's look at the back of her. Bless her little heart. Wounds to the back of Kristen Macdonald. Wounds to the front of Kristen Macdonald. God almighty. Okay, back of right hand of Kristen Macdonald. Breathing there. That looks like something right there. I mean, these children were butchered. The whole family was. And an attack like this, when someone is stabbed, like that's up close and personal. Usually when someone's stabbed, they're stabbed by someone that knows them. That's very close to them. Because, I mean, you're up in the victim's face. If you're stabbing someone, you're right up in their face. I think the prosecution's right. Let me take these photos down. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything. I never show things like that. I found those this morning. And since this case did happen way back before I was even born, I don't mind to take a look at them with y'all, but I still want to be respectful, to the dead and everything. I may even get in trouble with YouTube for this. I may have to trim it out. Anyways. We finally got to do the Jeffrey Macdonald Forever song. It is very, very, very heartbreaking. Here's what I think. I think they went out and rode their little Shetland pony that day. They come home and had a normal evening. I think Dr. Jeffrey Macdonald was in the living room reading. I think he got tired. He read for about an hour. He was going to go to bed. But when he went to bed, he found, which one was it? Kimberly, the older one, in the bed. And he was going to move her and get into bed. And he found that she had wet the bed. I think that started a fight between him and Colette. And maybe that wooden slat that he used to hit her and the girls was laying somewhere in the house. Because, you'll have extra pieces sometimes. To slats, to beds. Most beds don't have those slats anymore, I wouldn't think. They usually got like one of those iron frames, but it was probably handy and he just picked it up. I think he might have accidentally hit Kimberly when he was hitting Colette, and he took Kimberly back to her bedroom. Now he's in a lot of trouble. He's attacked Colette. She's unconscious. He's hit the other kid on accident, and here's another witness. He thought Colette was dead. See, the reason he got convicted of first-degree murder on Kristen is because they think that he just eliminated her as a witness. He killed her because he didn't want her to be a witness to what he had already done to Kimberly and Colette. I'm so sorry, Donald. I hope you didn't look at those pictures. I'm so sorry. Is your mom still with us, Donald? He beat his daughters to death, then used a knife on them. Yeah. And that paring knife that he says that he pulled out of Colette, I reckon that paring knife never stabbed her. It was the ice pick and stuff, right? He just snapped and went crazy. Now, a psychologist testified that, if Jeffrey did kill his family, he is capable of totally blocking that out. Totally blocking it out. I mean, if you had seen him on the Dick Cavett show, I mean, he wasn't even talking about his wife and kids. He's talking about what the Army investigators did to him. And he was smiling and going on. And I don't know why Helena Stokely would come forward and confess to murdering a family. She was probably had mental illness along with drug addiction and being an alcoholic. Helena actually died a few years after Jeffrey Macdonald was convicted. Now, her boyfriend, what's his name, Greg Mitchell, he also confessed to numerous people that they killed the Macdonald family. But no one ever believed him. He also died a few years after Helena died. And I believe they died from cirrhosis of the liver. I know Helena died from cirrhosis of the liver. Now, in the interview she done with 60 Minutes a few years after the trial, she was pregnant. And she admits in it that she was part of a satanic cult. And I'm going to get y'all the link to her interview because I don't have time to play it this morning because I've been on here forever. I'm still in my nightgown. That's 1:40. Let me get this real quick. Share. This video's only got four views. Now, the volume is a little low on this. That's why, on this interview, that's why I really didn't want to play it this morning. Yeah, the older one with the bed. Thank you, Donald. So, Donald, I can't figure out why the older one wet the bed. I mean, this was a regular thing of her wetting the bed. Now, I know some kids have bedwetting problems, but I mean, was like he abusive? Was someone abusing her? Or did she just have bedwetting problems? I mean, some kids wet the bed and there's nothing, they've never been abused or anything. She could have had some kind of medical issue. Well, what they should have done, well, they probably didn't have pull-ups then. I started saying, when a kid, is wet in the bed and stuff, maybe put a pull-up on them at night or something. Charles T. Thank you, CC. I have missed visiting with you. It seems like it has been forever. You always show so much compassion for all the victims of these horrible crimes. Usually bedwet is definitely a sign of, yeah, that's what I thought too. Forever a song. Me too. I used to wet the bed sometimes. And I was being abused. Yeah. Not in my immediate household, but yeah. I was scared to death. I was so scared when I was little. Like when I can remember one time specifically. I was at my dad's family reunion, and it's always on Father's Day, and there was a bunch of my family men in there watching the race. And I was sitting in there. I didn't want to watch the race, and I needed to go use the bathroom. But I was so scared to get up and walk across the room in front of them men that had never done anything to me. I mean, I was just terrified. If a man come to the house, that I didn't know and stuff, I would go hide. I mean, there's definite signs that I was being abused. Most of the time, you can tell when a child's being abused, by the way they act physically or sexually. Anyways, the first degree was his younger daughter. My mother died 2018. She stayed close to Colette's. Oh, Donald, I'm so sorry to hear of her passing. Thank you, Forever Song. Yeah, I try not to dwell on it. I just look at it like it's made me a stronger person. Everything I've went through, it shaped me into the person I am today. So, anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed this morning. I know I done a lot of reading. I didn't get to do a lot of talking, but this case right here, so I've been putting it off. There is so much to this case, and I didn't even read y'all everything that happened in the courtroom because I just didn't have time. But I like doing these older cases, and actually tomorrow morning, 10:30, 10:40, I set up a stream to do Susan Smith because it's been 28 years tomorrow since she killed her kids. And guess what? She got 30-year sentence with possibility of parole. And she's coming up for parole in 2023. She's not going to get it. She is never getting out of prison. But yeah, we will be discussing that tomorrow. Body is not in good health. Oh. Does anyone still live in that house? It must be really haunted. I think those apartments, let me see if those apartments Seems like I read about that. Donald, do you know if those apartments are still standing at Fort Bragg? You would think that it would be hard to get in and out of a place like, military housing and stuff, but evidently not. They said during that time, was it called Fayetteville and stuff? It was like full of drugs, heroin everywhere. All these soldiers coming back from Vietnam, they're all addicted to heroin. It's crazy. I believe she knew things about her father. Yeah, he could have been sexually abusing her. Who knows? And they probably didn't check those girls for that. They didn't even fingerprint them. Okay, is apartment. I'm gonna look it up, see if that apartment is still there. I think it's still there, maybe. Let me see. The home wants something of record is going to. Okay, it was demolished on March 15th, 2008, where today a state-of-the-art neighborhood center stands. So it was like a tourist attraction, but they did tear it down, and it says there is a state-of-the-art neighborhood center. Yeah. Did Jeffrey Macdonald get married? Okay, it says over 3 decades after being convicted for the murder of his first wife and their 2 young daughters and unborn son. I'm going to say unborn son. The article don't say that. Jeffrey Macdonald found a new wife. According to the Washington Post, he married Catherine Macdonald in 2002. She believes her husband is innocent. Now, we need to take a look at her picture before I get off here. She was a pretty woman. I don't get these women that want to hook up with these men that's got life sentences or 30 years in prison. I believe they do it because they date them because they don't really got to deal with them in person. Just go visit them sometimes. They can be in control of the relationship like that, if they're dating an inmate. Let's see. Here she is. Ooh, she's got older, but she was real pretty. Not that you get ugly when you get older, I'm just saying. Oh, you're so welcome, Donald. So welcome. Let's look at Catherine Macdonald, then I'm going to get off here. So there she is. There's the second one. I guess there she is when he met her. Pretty woman. Real pretty woman. I mean, Jeffrey Macdonald was an attractive guy, like back before he murdered his family. Now he's ugly as sin. Ugly as sin. He wrote a book. Here they are in prison. Prison picture when they got married. If you'll pull it up, look at them. They look happy. Like, how you gonna marry somebody in prison? He can't get no conjugal visits, I don't think. She must be a freaking Fruit Loop. Now, if you go on the ID channel, if you've got on demand, you know how you can go back and watch TV shows. Just find it by the network. Go to Investigative Discovery and go to, it'll have the People magazine series. And they did an episode on Jeffrey Macdonald, and it is the first season. In the last episode of the first season. I can't remember what episode it is, but it's really, really easy to find. It's a real good documentary, but he had some friends on there, honey. They was crying at the end. They believe he's completely innocent. That one woman says she makes her and her family makes a toast to him every New Year's Eve, and she can't wait till he gets to walk out of prison and hug him. Hey, evidence don't lie. At first I thought, maybe it's a possibility. Maybe there's a copycat cult. But, with the evidence and especially the pajama top, and that's why the jury convicted him. The reason they convicted him is because that pajama top. And them holes, matched up with the holes in Colette's chest. That was one of the main reasons they convicted him. The evidence don't lie. They say the defense claims there was a bloody syringe found outside the Macdonald home. I mean, he could have picked that up. from a drug user or something. Now they did say that there was candle wax in the floor. I didn't I didn't see investigators say anything about that. Jeffrey could have invented that, and his lawyers said there was black candle wax consistent with a woman standing there. Um, and another thing that made me think it might be possible is because the military police, the guy that was responding to the Macdonald home, on his way there, he saw a woman in a floppy hat and knee high boots and a blonde wig. But crap, everybody wore boots and stuff back then, knee high boots, you know. I think he's guilty. And I heard a recording of him. He said, "If getting out of prison means that I have to admit guilt, I'm never going home." That was his words. I think People Magazine, that head writer there, she thinks Jeffrey Macdonald's innocent. You could tell the way she was talking on that interview. But anyhow, y'all, I'd love to stay and chat with y'all, but crap, it's almost 2 o'clock. I've been on here 2 hours. But I enjoyed doing this case, and tomorrow we're going to get into the Susan Smith case, the woman that drowned her 2 kids. I think it was back in, it was 94 or 92. I think it's 94. I'm pretty sure it's 94. But anyways, thank y'all for listening and chatting with me, and I will see y'all in the morning. Be safe, be kind, and peace. I don't think he's guilty as well. Oh, you don't think he is, Charles? May not be. It looks like to me, at first I thought he might not be, but it looks like it's a good possibility he could be. Who knows? I don't think we're ever going to know the truth. I know he did take a polygraph test after he was convicted, and they said he passed. Who knows the truth? We're never going to know. Thank you for having us on. Anyways, guys, y'all have a great day. And y'all remember, Halloween night, I'm going to do a live stream. It'll be our 4th annual Halloween party on YouTube. So y'all get ready for that. And I'm going to invite people up. If y'all want to come up Halloween, hang out with me. You don't have to have a costume or nothing. Just come up and hang out with me. Oh, you do think he's guilty. Oh, okay. I was like, what, Cheryl? Well, it's all right if you thought he was not guilty. I don't care. Anyways, y'all have a great day. Be safe, be kind, and peace. Pray for my kitty. She's sick, y'all. Oh, and pray for Hibiscus' husband. He had to be taken to the hospital last night. He's in hospital. So y'all say a prayer for him. Bye, guys.